So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Michelle Rosado, and I work at the Connecticut Department of Education, and I'm joined by colleagues from the College Board and from the Department of Ed, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I'll turn it over to Deirdre first, and then Aissa, and then Adrian.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deirdre Ducharme. I work at the Connecticut State Department of Ed, and I support your work and the work of your SSD coordinators as you gear up for spring testing and providing supports and accommodations to your students with IEPs and 504 plans, as well as those supports for English learners. Thanks for taking time out today to join us.
Aissa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aissa Julius. I am part of the digital implementation team here at College Board, and I work close with Adrian and the Connecticut team to ensure that this is a successful implementation. So I will turn it over to Adrian, I believe.
Hi, everybody. This is Adrienne Cupper, and I work on the State Contract Program Management team at the College Board. So I also work closely with the Connecticut team and with Aissa and some of our other folks internally to make sure that things go smoothly for you. So I'm happy to be here today, and we have lots of content for you today.
Great. Why don't we start going through the slides? So just for reminders, if you have any questions, you can type them into the question box in the platform, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can. We might just answer them as we're going along if they're behind the scenes, but we'll definitely get back to you. Additionally, this session is being recorded and it will be posted to the Connecticut Department of Education SAT School Day webpage. And there's our contact information, which I'm sure you have. All right. Okay, just a few reminders before we get into really the reason for the presentation is to take you through TIDE and what you can do in TIDE and how to do things. And Aissa is going to be the one that's going to take you through the presentation. But there are a few reminders that I just wanted everyone to know. Here's the test dates that we have up here. Just letting you know, just emphasizing you can choose any date you want in March to test. You don't have to wait until April to do makeups. It's probably easier if you try to get all your testing done in March. And then there's an accommodated testing window for certain students. You can check your NAR roster and SSD next week when it's available on the 16th to see which students you can test during that accommodated window. All right, here's some resources. We've shared these with you, manuals. There's a calendar of upcoming events. So next week, you're getting some materials shipped beginning on the 15th through the 17th, and you'll be able to access the NAR on the 16th. Okay. And also just letting you know, copies of these slides are available to download in the handout section if you would like them. There's also a copy of the TIDE manual in there. We produce a student assessment news. It has updates on all of our assessment programs. You should be getting a copy of that if you are a test coordinator for SAT, or if you're a DA or an English language coordinator. You can also sign up for it by visiting our portal, or you can shoot me an email and we can add you to the listserv. And then there's our website, College Board's website, and our website. Okay, just a reminder on participation. The expectation is that all grade 11 students in public school will take the Connecticut SAT School Day, with the exception of a few students who will take the alternate assessment. And we just want to make sure that you understand that those requirements for testing, also that we're committed to health and safety. So obviously we would revisit things if need be. All right, so registration in TIDE happens through our PSIS registration system. We submit multiple files. You can see the dates below on which are the dates for submitting files to the College Board to populate TIDE. And if there's something that's inaccurate in TIDE when you're looking at your rosters, you need to reach out to your district's PSIS coordinator to make those updates. You cannot modify any student information in terms of demographics, grade level, things like that within Tide. You cannot do that through the Connecticut program. All right, and here's just a little bit more about PSIS and Tide. Okay. All right, so I think this was, I'm switching it over, but before I do, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone in the schools for all the work that you're doing to make this administration successful. I know it's a new way of doing things, and so we really appreciate the additional work. Also, shout out to school counselors. This is National School Counselor Week, and we love school counselors. You're so great. You're awesome. You give support to families and students. So thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to, is it you, Aisa? Or
No,
is it Adrian?
Actually, yeah. So I just have 3 brief slides for you guys here, and then I will be turning over to Aisa to do a walkthrough. But the 3 slides I wanted to talk to, the first one here is just a reminder that you can do test administration practice before you actually get to test day. So we know that this is kind of a new experience for you guys to administer the SAT in this way. So I just wanted to take the chance to remind you that there are practice opportunities. So there is an interactive proctor simulation where proctors can have the opportunity to learn how to administer the tests using the TA interface. There's also the TA interface practice site and the student digital test preview, and that provides a really hands-on, realistic experience for starting a test setting, a test session, monitoring student testing, and give students a chance to kind of experience what it'll be like on test day for themselves. So we recommend that schools plan to incorporate this exercise into staff training, and if possible, give students an opportunity, at some point in the days leading up to testing, to get a chance to go in there and kind of experience it themselves as well. There is, if you go to our digital testing portal, you'll see that there's detailed information about how to use the practice opportunities, and so there's a resource guide, and all of that's on the digital testing portal. But that's how you access the practice sites themselves and the resources to support practice. So just a call out about that. And then the other thing that I just wanted to just talk about is the training. So there are some on-demand training modules available for you to take to be prepared for testing. So there's the digital coordinator training, there's a Tide training, and then there's digital proctor training. So yesterday, actually Tuesday, I believe, Michelle had sent out an email later in the day to everybody, to all the test coordinators, with information about how to access online training. So the test coordinators do have to complete the training courses, and then you can share the proctor training course with your staff if you would like to do so, so they can be prepared for test administration as well. When you are signing up for the training, it's going to ask you when you sign in what your test date is. So please make sure you select March 23rd. Even if you're not administering the test till sometime later in the window, make sure you select March 23rd, because that's the first day of the window and that's what the system's going to recognize. And then you put in your school name. If you have a problem with your school name, it's actually easiest to use your AI code, because that'll make sure that it's connecting with your school and not a school that has a similar name. So use your AI code on March 23rd, and you should be able to get in, access the training, and you can take the trainings that you need to take, and also share the proctor training with proctors if you would like to do that as well. And this is just a shot. Now, this is a shot of my College Board professional account dashboard. Yours is going to look a little bit different. But I wanted to call out, you can go through your College Board professional accounts dashboard as well to access the training. Now, everybody has to have a College Board professional account to be able to access training. How the instruction for going about and getting that College Board account, if you have staff that don't have it, that was in Michelle's email that she sent out. But once you're into your College Board account, you're going to see you have a dashboard, and you'll see towards the bottom of your dashboard, it'll say Test Administration Training for the SAT Suite of Assessments. That's what I've circled in red on the screen. And if you click on that, that's where you'll enter your school AI code and your test date, and that's how you can get into the training for this particular administration. So with that, that's how you get into training and what you need to do. I'm going to turn it over now to Aisa to do the walkthrough of TIDE.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrian. Thanks so much, Michelle. Alrighty. So to start off with, by now, you should have, as test coordinators, you should have received an email letting you know that your TIDE account has been activated. This was actually delivered on Monday, so February 7th. An email notification came from KMBM Assessment. It does not come from College Board. Within the body of the email, there is a link that you click on. It does expire within 15 minutes, but of course, there's another one that you can click to go through the process of accessing your account. So when you, again, backtrack a little, when you are at it there, you receive this activation email. If you did not, just make sure to check your junk mail and all of that to ensure that if you are a new test coordinator, for example, and the changes haven't been made, I know some of you have already reached out to Michelle, and those updates have been coming down to me to make those updates so you are entered and have access to TIDE as soon as possible. One way to the link to the TIDE, the College Board TIDE, has been included here. And another way to get to it is through our College Board digital testing site as well. That will take you directly to the College Board TIDE. Do keep in mind that your College Board access to TIDE is different than that of any other Connecticut TIDE systems that you may use or CAI systems that you may use. They're completely separate. So do make sure that you are logging into the College Board one and not the CSDE one. Well, we start with the activation of your account. So in order to start test preparations, you do need to access and be familiar with this application, right? Because you will, as test coordinators, you will use TIDE from beginning to end of the administration. And that's what we will focus on today, just walking you through how and what to do in TIDE to ensure that you successfully administer and see this assessment through. So as test coordinators, you must enter into TIDE staff that will be assisting with administering the assessment and who will need access to TIDE, such as SSD coordinators and proctors, for example. And we'll go through that here shortly. Before we jump into TIDE itself, so TIDE is really at the core of the CAI test delivery system, which enables and supports digital testing from beginning to end. And for TIDE to work effectively, it starts with you, with a test coordinator, accessing TIDE and verifying the data within the system, and that you go over all the tasks that are needed. So for test coordinators, you are responsible for ensuring that all students who are eligible for testing are in TIDE, including recent transfers, and the test settings are entered in and accurately entered within the TIDE systems. And the other functions that fall within your access on TIDE is creating staff accounts. And some of you may already have some questions around that, and I will make sure to go into detail later on in this presentation. Other ones are, in terms of students, is really configuring student test settings. TIDE holds all settings that control accommodated testing, and you can also utilize room rosters to kind of help you organize those. And you also do use TIDE to print test tickets, which your students will need to access digital testing itself. So I will go ahead and jump into TIDE, so bear with me a second. Okay, so as test coordinator, your role would be that of a digital admin or DA. So as soon as you log in, this is what the site itself will look like. Now, on here, Tide holds, again, if you will utilize Tides from beginning to end. And if you look at this on the left side of the Tide page, is what you will use and need to prepare for testing. So the left side is what you will use prior to testing, and on the right side, under administering tests, is what you will use on test day and afterwards. So to take advantage of that, and I will walk through each one of the functions within Tide. So before I do, another way, as I mentioned, to get into Tide is through the digital testing portal. And this is, I do like to highlight this page. And of course, you do have CSD websites that have a lot of useful information. But if you find yourself in the digital testing page, you can also use this to your advantage. You can find links to access Tide, even to sign into the TA interface, just preparations. US test coordinator, you can work with your tech coordinator to ensure that everything is ready and that you are prepared for testing. So you can click sign into Tide, and this will take you to this page as well. So before I jump back to the slide, so bear with me. I will just quickly highlight what you see as well. Oh, it looks like it took me back. Excuse me. Bring this back. Other useful links here within Tide. You do have a help guide here that also kind of walks you through just some questions that you may have about how to use Tide. Some of you may already have clicked through it. It's very useful and it's very lengthy, so it does provide a lot of information. So that's another useful resource that you can find here. And up on the top left of Tide itself, you can also find links that take you to other useful resources. CAI or Cambium resources, that being the TA interface practice site, student digital test preview, and of course the TA interface that you as a test coordinator can also use if you're needed to administer the test. I will jump back to the presentation. Alrighty. So the very first thing that I will go over is creating staff accounts. Now that you have access to Tide, and this is the first step that you should start planning on when you start planning for your test day itself, and just ensuring that you do have enough staff that will assist you. So as I mentioned, the test coordinator must determine staffing needs and start to create user accounts and you can do it as soon as you've received your access, which was earlier in this week. So for staff who will be acting as proctors, user accounts for College Board's Tide will need to be created by you by the test coordinator. You can also create DA accounts or digital admin accounts for your SSD coordinator, so they can assist you with entering a student's test settings into Tide, and also save you some time as a test coordinator, since you do have a lot of tasks to go through prior to your test day. Again, as I've mentioned before, these user accounts will use different login information than that of other CSD assessments that use Tide. So just briefly, just going down both of the accounts. So the digital admin permission should only be assigned, as I mentioned, to staff who will be helping you with user and student setup tasks to kind of help you just lessen all the time and tasks, all the time that you will be spending prior to testing. And the PR roles should be assigned to staff who are administering the test or the pre-administration sessions only. So those roles should only be created for that staff that are assisting with the administration. And do keep in mind that as a DA, you can also proctor the sessions. So jumping back. So in Tide itself, on the left side, you go under users, and there are a few simple ways to enter user accounts. One being if you just have one user that you would like to do it. If you would like to do it individually, you start with entering the email address, and I will just put mine. And add user, and then you add the user's name and last name, of course, and you will select the role. Again, the only options that you will see is that of digital admin, and this should only be given to the staff who are enrolled that will be assisting you with the test administration tasks, such as adding student test settings and or creating other user roles, for example, and or proctor. Here, this will be pre-populated for you, of course, depending on your school. This will say Connecticut, in your district, in your school, and then you click save. For the sake of this, I will just create a dummy one. And as soon as this is created, it may take up to 15 minutes. The user should receive the automated email from Cambium Assessments. Another way to create user accounts, and this may save you some time, especially if you do have a lot of user accounts to create. You can do so by downloading the template and using the upload users feature in Tide. In here, you will need the same information that you just saw when I created the individual account, that being the email addresses, the first and last names, of course. You will need to make sure that you are entering the correct role, and that would be of digital admin, DA, or proctor, PR. And this is what this will look like. So you have email address, last name, first name, role, state, of course, is Connecticut, district, org, and org ID. Those are the org ID numbers affiliated with your school, which you will see, and I will show you exactly what you will see. And then you add the last column is add as the action. That you upload it here. And then you go through a review to ensure that everything looks correct, and you click next. This is the easiest way to upload. I would say if you have 5+ more users to upload, it just saves you some time in the long run. And if you're not sure if you've added someone, you can quickly just check with the email address entering here in the top right corner. Just enter the email address of the user, and it will tell you if they've been added. If you want to see a full list of all the users you've added, you can either go to all roles, search, and this will bring back a list of all the users you've done. You can do an export to inbox via Excel, and just a quick reminder: the inbox doesn't mean your email inbox. It's actually the inbox here in Tide, which is found here in the top right corner. So an Excel file will be sent there for you to kind of go through the list of the staff accounts that you've created. Alrighty, so we'll jump back into the presentation. Now, another task that you have on your plate as a test coordinator is configuring students' test settings. And this is a big one, especially because you do want your students to have a successful administration and have everything that they need, which includes students that have accommodations. And there are a few steps to ensure of this. So students approved for accommodations in SSD online will need to use digital accommodation provided by in the test delivery platform, right? So as test coordinator, you can work with your SSD coordinator and review the NAR just to determine that one, who has been approved for accommodations, and what accommodations they've been approved for, just to ensure that those are being appropriately entered in TIDE. Test tools and accommodations, which does include the 50% extended time for EL support students, must also be turned on for each test section to which the accommodation applies. And I will do a walkthrough of all of this as well when I am in the TIDE application. A big one, student test settings must be updated ahead of test day. So it doesn't hurt to double check or have your SSD coordinator ensuring that you give them access to TIDE just to double check that the appropriate accommodations have been entered prior to test day, because the last thing you want is come test day and your student is not able to enter the secure browser because they don't have the correct accommodations. So let me jump back on to TIDE. Alrighty. So all students registered for testing will be loaded and available to view in TIDE, of course, ahead of test day. And now that you have access to TIDE, you may have already been there and seen the list of your students. Test settings and tools task menu allows you to view and edit or upload the student test settings really for your students. And the test settings and tools search functionality is similar to the student's search page if you've been playing around with it. So there are two ways really to add students test settings and to view your students. So one can be through students and view and export students, or the other one through the test settings and tools. For the purpose of this, I will go through the test settings and tools. So we click test settings and tools. Again, this will be pre-populated for you with your school's information, so you will not need to do this. One thing you will see when pulling student information, please ensure that you go to the administration dropdown and you choose your admin, which is SAT School Day, March 23, 25th, and or 29th through the 30th, or not or, and 29th through the 30th. Some of your schools, some of you may have already may have administered the digital PSAT 8-9 in the fall. So those students will still be there if you have. So for the SAT, make sure that you choose SAT School Day on March 23rd. Once you do, you click search. For the purpose of this, I will just pull a random demo student. So to edit settings for an individual student, you can click on the pencil. And here it will give you the student's name. Just ensure that it's the correct student. It's another place to check that you pick the correct students to add the test settings for. And as you go down here, it gives you their demographic information, which includes registration number, first and last name, date of birth, and alrighty, so I will do all of this. So for SAT, you must identify any accommodations, and if the student testing is approved with College Board approved accommodations, right? So the students must be approved through College Board, and then once they've been approved, they'll show in your NAR. It will tell you exactly what they have been approved for, and you can utilize that to enter students' test settings appropriately in TIDE. So if you have a student that has been approved for a time and 1/2, make sure you do College Board accommodations, and then you proceed to enter the student's correct time. So for this student, it's time and 1/2, so you enter for every single section of that you see here, for every section of the test. And then if the student has other accommodations, you will proceed to go through each one of the sections, of course, again, to make sure that you enter in every single one of the test. Another way to kind of just get a little extra information about each of the accommodations here, you can click on the question mark. And this will just give you a bit of additional information. Now, one thing that I do like to go over is if you are administering any accommodations that is not listed in any of these categories in this page, you must toggle the non-embedded accommodations to yes, right? And some of that non-embedded accommodations include accommodations such as preferential seating or students that have small group testing. They may not have extended time, for example, but they may have an accommodation for to test in a small group setting. And for that, yet they're still approved for accommodations, but this is a non-embedded accommodations. And you would just need to click yes for the student. Now, for students with EL support, for English learner supports, time and that are approved for time and 1/2, you will need to select yes, and then proceed to enter the time and 1/2 for each one of the sections, right? So this was for students that are approved for time and 1/2 for EL students. Now, if the use of the students the use of word-to-word dictionaries or translated test directions, those are not supports that require updating this setting. So if the student is only using translated test directions, for example, or a word-to-word dictionary, this should be a no. But if the student is using the EL supports with time and 1/2, it needs to be a yes and the time added. And you click save, and that will ensure that your student has been given the appropriate accommodations. Alrighty.
Aisa, since we don't administer the essay with our SAT, do they just ignore that part of it? Because I noticed that that was one of the options.
Yeah, so you will see the essay there, because we do there's no way to hide it, unfortunately, in Tide. So you will see that there. But on test day, do not worry, you will not see that option on there, because I know that that could cause some confusion. In terms of entering that, that's actually, I have an outstanding question for that, because so I will need to get back to you with 100% in whether it needs to be toggled yes or no. That's a question that we have right now with CAI. Okay. Another way to add students test settings, this is similar to adding multiple users in Tide. You can upload test settings and tools as well. Similar to the user feature, you download the template into Excel, and this will list the similar options that you saw once we were going through the students, the individual student settings. So once that comes up. So to manage for several students at once, you can use the upload test settings and tools. However, do keep in mind, before uploading, you must adjust the student's test settings in order to upload, for the upload to be successful. And by that, I mean you need to go back to the accommodations drop-down and choose CB, College Board accommodations, prior to uploading the students and test settings template. And once that comes up, I will briefly show you what that looks like. It should include, of course, the student's registration number, which that you can get from Tide. The test, you will go through the test options, the tool name. Oh, this is depending on this. I should know this. And then you can add test and time 10.5. You go here. Again, you would have to do that for all the sections of the testing. I will need to get back to Michelle's question in terms of the essay. Alrighty. Just briefly, as I mentioned, another way to pull student information is through the students drop down here, view, edit, export students. Similar view to that we were just looking at for test settings and tools. It looks exact same. You just pull this. It will bring you the list of your students, and you can go back again and click the pencil to verify the students' accommodation, students' information is appropriate. Okay. So with that, let me jump back to the presentation. All right, so we are managing rosters. So using Tide rosters is optional. However, you know, they're not required for Tide to function properly, and they're not roster, as in the TA interface is not dependent of the rosters that you create for your individual rooms. So this feature can be used to group students together based on the room that they will be assigned. This is, I do find rosters, although optional, they are extremely helpful for creating rosters for accommodated rooms. But do be mindful of the type of accommodations, and you know, double check, of course, the NAR, as some accommodations require students to test in separate different rooms, depending, especially the more accommodations that they may have. So be mindful of when creating those rosters. Again, using Tide rosters is optional, and they're not required for either Tide or any of the CA applications that you use for testing to function properly. So let me jump back to Tide. Alrighty, so the here on the left side, rosters does fall under preparing for testing. Here you have the options to add roster, view, edit, print roster, upload roster. So you go to add rosters. I call out, you will add students to rosters by administration. So be sure you do not use students from a different admin to the same roster, especially if you may have administered the PSAT A9 in the fall. So make sure that you choose the correct one, which is the SAT school date, March 23-25. For this, here you can also search students based on the type of accommodations. If you're creating rosters for students, for rooms for students with accommodations. You do need a roster name and a proctor. By now, you should have, before you create your rosters, of course, you should have already created proctor accounts. And this is why it's not populating. Again, this will be pre-populated for you. I just have to do it every time. One thing I do like to call out, when you create a roster and you're thinking of a roster name, to make it easier for you to find them and distribute them, just give the roster a name that makes it specific to, let's say, an accommodated room. Say you're testing students in the library, you can put library accommodated room or something that will make it quick for you to identify and find them. And then again, by now, when creating the rosters, you should have already created proctor accounts. You can, if you're deciding to create rosters in Tide, you can provide a roster to each proctor on test day, so they can utilize that for attendance within their, and for checking in test takers into their testing rooms. So that's added benefits of creating rosters in Tide. Well, this likes to think today. Another call out, just rosters are retrieved by roster name. So that's another reason why, to make it easier and faster, just when creating, just make sure that you are giving specific names. You can even go as far as adding proctor names to your roster name. This is thinking. And I don't want to do this again. So all of this will be pre-populated. You do choose the correct administration. This will give you a list of your students here on the left side. And this is where you will choose and click students to add and to your roster. And here on the right side is what the students that you've selected will go on that roster. And the view, edit, and print is where you can use this feature to it's lagging a little bit you can use this way to kind of pull your rosters and print them from here. It's a little, I don't know if it's my internet, but with that, let me just move forward. Again, you can also upload rosters the same way that you've done, that we've seen for test settings and for users. You can go through the upload roster features where you can download a template and go from there. And you will need student registrations for that. Okay. Moving on down, the next feature I want to touch on are the reports that are available to you in Tide. So some of the reports are found under the monitoring test progress, and they can be used to view testing progress, review and plan for students who may not have completed testing. The ones that I do find very useful, and that you may do as well, are live session monitoring and plan and manage testing. So for the live session, it allows you to see test day status of students testing, of actual active testing rooms. And you can use this feature to kind of monitor the start of tests so you can keep track of your overall admin schedule. And the other report is the plan and manage testing. This report should be used and can be used to kind of keep a track of students who have completed testing. You can use this report at the end of the test day, so you can identify students who may not have completed testing on that day, or that may need to be rescheduled to test within the testing window. You can use the reports at the end of the March testing window to determine testers who may be eligible for a makeup. So let me jump back onto Tide. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the left side of Tide under preparing for testing is what you will mostly utilize prior to testing. And here on the right is where you will use it during and after. And under monitoring test progress is where you will find the report. Again, I will only go over the first two. The live session monitoring, again, you will see your school information here. Just confirm that you're seeing the right school. So since there are no active sessions right now, this is blank. However, this will give you an idea of what the report is. So what it does include is here at the top is number of sessions, and these are active. If you want to see inactive sessions, you can click this and it will give you this inactive one. But for active, it will give you the proctor name, the test name to tell you what test they're testing in that room, session ID, the start time of session, and the number of students that are testing, how many tests are in progress, if any tests were paused, So the way I kind of recommend this to be used is as a test coordinator, you can't always be in multiple places at once, especially during testing. So however, you can utilize this report to kind of have eyes in all of your testing rooms at once. And just briefly, it can briefly tell you if there is an issue, and you can pick up to see if there may be something going on, especially if you see any students or tests that have been paused. You can just quickly identify what proctor it is, you'll know where that is, and you can go and check in on that. It also allows you to just to keep track of your overall admin schedule, so you have a better idea if there has been any delays, or if the testing in one room versus another one may be going longer. And you may need to keep that side of the school a little bit quieter, for example. This can also be used should you need to call us in terms of if there's an irregularity happening. You can also use this to quickly pull the session ID number, which is one of the necessary items that they ask you for when you call into our customer service on test day for test day irregularities. Again, I find this very useful, kind of gives you eyes on everywhere, and just to ensure that everything is going smoothly. The other report that I do want to touch on is the plan and manage testing. This you can use to keep track of students who have completed testing. This report lists each student's test opportunity for each test section, and the status, which is completed. Should say completed for your students. Use this report, as I mentioned, to identify students who have not completed testing and will need to be rescheduled to do so within the window. Again, well, right now we can only see SDQ, which is the pre-admin. Again, this will already be pre-populated for you, so you don't have to worry about that. What I do recommend, when I myself pull these reports, I like to choose the third option, which will pull data for students on any opportunity, and then the status of any. And then you run this report, and then you will just give you a list of all your students that have tested. It can help you identify who wasn't, who didn't test. You can also use that to cross-check the rosters that your testing rooms might have used to kind of check in students, and just to kind of cross-check that you have the correct list of students that were either absent or did participate on the test. Alrighty, so let me jump back to the presentation. The last thing that I do want to touch on is the test tickets. Of course, so all students will need a test ticket for the pre-administration session and for test day. So if you are deciding to do the pre-administration ahead of test day, you will need to print test tickets for your students. And it will give you, you can kind of see here what it looks like. This will give the student all the information that they need to enter the secure browser. It will provide them with a registration number. And they need to enter that number exactly as they see it on the test ticket, which may also include leading zeros. We do see some call drivers around that, sometimes because they forget to add the leading zeros. So again, pre-admin, the students will need their test tickets for the pre-administration and for test day. And let me jump back to here. So there are, to print test tickets, of course, you go to the right side. You can do so. You can print from the student list, or you can print from a roster list. This is if you've created any rosters. This makes it easier in terms of organization. This is also another plus, I guess, for creating rosters if you decide to do so. It keeps your some of your materials organized. So if you print from the roster list, you print the roster. It will also print the students that are affiliated with that room. And you can use that to kind of package your items for each of the testing rooms. You can also print it from the student list. And again, this will be all pre-populated. Make sure that you're choosing the correct administration. And here it will give you a list of your students. You can just check all of them. You can print all test tickets, selected tickets, let me just see. So when you're printing, one thing that we do highly recommend is when you're printing students' tickets, make sure you do the one by one. So you just get one student's information per page. It just makes it easier. And also for organization purposes. Another feature that it's here when you're printing this is the student settings and tools. So if you do have any students with accommodations that have been entered into Tide, you can click on this and this will give you a list of the students and registrations and the test settings that they've been added. Again, it's another way to cross-check that students' test settings have been added into Tide for your students with accommodations. I know I sound like a broken record, but we do want to make sure that those settings have been added for them because we do want them to have a successful administration. With that, I have come to the end and we are almost at time. So let me, are there any questions, Michelle, that we can go over or you would like to go over?
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions that have come in and many of them have been answered by Adrian or Deirdre or Karen or me. But there was a little bit of confusion about assigning the proctor a role in Tide. Does the proctor go into Tide or do they go into the TA interface when they're administering the test?
Oh, for proctors, it's a TA interface. So there's no need for proctors to go into Tide. They can go through the digital testing portal and just sign into the TA interface through here. And it will bring them into their login. They log in, it will take them right straight to where they go to launch the test. Should they go through Tide, or if you are a test coordinator that you are you choose to proctor the test, you can do so through the top left here and click on test administration. And this will take you to the login where you go to administer the test. So the proctors do not need to go to Tide. There's no need for them to do so since they are not, they're just, their role is mainly to administer the test. There's nothing for them to prepare prior to testing in Tide.
Let's see, someone asked if you could have a copy of the questions and answers from this that people have asked. Yeah, we can definitely send that out when you get a link to the recording. There's just a lot. Is there an instruction sheet for proctors? Well, there's a manual for proctors that would have everything in there. There's also a guide for the TA interface, which I sent a link to today. And then when the proctors go through the training, it's going to cover all of these areas. Let's see.
So
Adrian,
briefly on
Deirdre, you want to jump in on anything?
Michelle, I would just reiterate that on Monday, February 14th, we will be hosting a similar training, a similar Tide training rather, with the focus on accommodation. So if you have specific accommodations about like which kind of designated support should be reflected in Tide, or how to schedule test settings for kids with extended time or what have you, please stay tuned to Monday's session. Please join us, or if you're unable to participate, then definitely seek out the recording and related resources that are posted to the Connecticut SAT School Day page following Monday's session. And we're always just a phone call away, so, or an email. So you have questions that weren't answered, and if you participate in the College Board's proctor training and still have questions, then reach out.
Yeah, because there's still a few questions here that we didn't get to. We have a couple more minutes. Let me see if I can talk about any of them. I think this will come up again on Monday's training, but some people are asking about even though we don't give the essay, do you have to enter the 50% extended time in the essay section? It says the system will not let you continue without entering something in the essay section.
Yes, so for now, if you are already in there entering that, just go ahead and do so. But I will get you that answer, and those will be answered by Monday. Absolutely.
Okay. Again, I want to just reiterate how we really appreciate all the work that you're doing in the school districts to make this happen, on top of all the other things that you're dealing with. So we really appreciate it. And Deirdre and I are available. We can, set up a Teams meeting with you. We can talk to you. We can email with you. If you're confused about things and they don't make sense, please reach out to one of us and we can talk you through things. If we don't know the answer, then we go to Adrian and we go to Aisa and they know the answer. So I think that's about it. Just thanks for attending, everyone, and thank you, Aisa and Adrian and Deirdre and Karen, for your help on this webinar. And we will maybe be talking to some of you again on Monday. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you.